Amistad and HarperAudio present The Temple of My Familiar, a novel by Alice Walker, performed by Janina Edwards. To Robert, in whom the goddess shines. If they have lied about me, they have lied about everything. Lissy Lyles. A letter from Alice Walker, 2023. Dear listener, regarding the temple of my familiar, or how, following my dreams, I came to understand that the temple of my own familiar, i.e. spirit, is freedom. Parents are not supposed to have favorite children. One child favored, appreciated, loved above all the rest. It must be the same with novels. But I do have a favorite, and the temple of my familiar is it. Why is this so? I have written about the odd path that started my journey on this novel, but I will sketch it again, as it never quite loses its glimmer of magic. There I was, years ago, in a tiny townhouse I'd purchased after a divorce, alone upstairs in a big wooden bed that seemed built for dreams. Dreaming of strangers downstairs, in a room below the basement, creating elaborate garments made of feathers. The people, brown, indigenous, the feathered cloaks as varied as the birds from which the feathers came. Bright, unusual. What could the message be to me, coming as I, so American and of a different century, did from outside this dream? Still it was mine, as it had come to me. What did it mean? I determined I must find these people, these feathers, these cloaks. I knew this right away. But where to look? They had been speaking a language that was not English. I hired my daughter's Spanish teacher to teach me Spanish. I had studied French in school, but these people were not French. They were not exactly Spanish either, but something about them encouraged my study of a language they might have, in some realm, understood. We struggled along. I learned enough Spanish to go off to Mexico, found a house in the middle of what appeared to be a jungle, bought it, plugged in a typewriter, wrote. And the temple of my familiar was like that the whole way, one thing opening out into another, and my delight in finding myself in a complete world of people I wanted to know better. There was, as well, a compulsion throughout the writing to find, to wear, to have about me the colors coral and turquoise, which I often find all these years later on fingers or earlobes or wrists. Of all things associated with the writing of this book, I am most happy that the dear ones with whom I lived at the time took all my compulsions seriously. That is to say, there was much searching for coral and turquoise ornaments, much help with my gropingly slow comprehension of Spanish, much patience with my absorption in the varying qualities of feathers. The temple of my familiar is to be lived in or visited as a friend. It is a book that will always have something to share, to offer, to teach. I grew to love all the people who inhabit it, and I enjoyed knowing the magic that creation can be when we recognize we and the mystery of creation are one. Alice Walker, 2023. Part 1. In the old country, in South America, Carlotta's grandmother, Celie, had been a seamstress, but really more of a sewing magician. She was the creator of clothing, especially capes, made of feathers. These capes were worn by dancers and musicians and priests at traditional village festivals and had been worn for countless generations. When she was a young child, Carlotta's mother, also called Celie, was sent to collect the peacock feathers used in the designs. Little Celie had stood waiting as the fat, perspiring woman who owned the peacocks held them in ashen-scratched hands and tore out the beautiful feathers one by one. It was then that Celie began to understand the peacock's mournful cry. It had puzzled her at first, why a creature so beautiful, though admittedly with
Sample complete. Ready to continue?